Hi, and welcome to a lecture on data tables in Simio. What we're going to learn today is sort of a more generic form of the data tables that you've already seen with the arrival rates table and the work schedule. This is going to be in that same section of Simio. And what it's going to allow us to do is, among other things, stuff like the processing times for the different kind of order types. So now you have the order types, entree types, and the small items for your project, the side items for your project. And a reasonable question is, well, how can we model that in Simio? That an entity comes, and then they have a different type. And today you're going to learn a way of doing that. Of course, what we're going to use though is the Nimitz coffee bar. So if you haven't already, stop the video, open your Nimitz. Doesn't matter which one. I know there's several versions of this running around because I know you've all been faithfully doing this along with the video as you do it. So stop the video for a sec, open that up, make sure it's open, and try to work along with me as I go through this. It really helps a lot to do this. It really helps you encode it. Okay, so we're going to now include different types of coffee, and we're going to assume that all customers get the same amount of, instead of assuming they get all the same amount of coffee, right? We're going to assume they're going to get a different size. They're going to get a small, a medium, or a large. Okay, and these are the probabilities. And each one has its own fill time at the self-service station. Okay, so this is for the self-service. Okay, so in Simio, you click on schema and then tables, okay? And we're going to click we're going to make sure we have this thing highlighted. So we're over here in the data tab and we have tables selected, okay? And we just click on this add table button. It turns out there's different kinds of tables, but you can just click on the add table, okay? Once you're done doing that, you're going to see that you have a little tab here called Table 1. It has a name. And of course, we should try to be descriptive in our name. This is our default table. And we're going to call it the coffee type table. Okay, so in your Nimitz, just relabel that coffee type table. Okay. Now, we want to add some columns to this table. Right now, there's nothing populating the table. Of course, we're going to do that. So up here, you're going to see what we're going to click down is on the property. And the property is sort of the most important thing here. And we are going to have an object reference property. This will allow it to be accessible from the objects in our model. Okay, so what we're creating here, and this is really a powerful part of this lecture, is basically when you think back to how you populate some of the property windows in that in the facility when you're designing your model, we're going to start to be able to add more and more things to that, and we're going to see how that all works today. Okay, so we click on the object reference property, and then once we have that property, we're going to say, okay, well, let's call that the coffee size, because that's what we want to add. So we rename that coffee size here and here. Okay, you're going to notice that you have to do it in both places when you do that. Okay, now we're going to add another column to this, because we need to, if we think about it, what do we need? Well, we need that whole table, so we're going to need, we have the 3 different kinds of coffees. We have small, medium, large, and they have different amounts. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to select an integer. Okay, and then we're going to label that ounce. Okay, so that's the size of the coffee. Okay, And for the size of the coffee, for right now, that's not going to play a huge role in our model. But you can see that you might want to start having that size there to understand how much of the inventory is going down. So we're going to refer to that in a later lecture. So we'll just have it in there for now, but it won't be affected in this particular lecture. It'll be there in subsequent lectures. Okay. Now we add another column. In this one, you can either you make this one a real number. Okay, so you go up here to property and you select real instead of integer, and that's going to be the probability that we select that. And then finally, we're going to need to select an expression, and that expression is going to represent the service time for filling that coffee. Okay, because the different sizes we're going to say has a different service time. Okay, now we populate the table. We put small. We just write. If you just start typing here, small, then you put 8 for the small size, 30 for the percentage, the percentage chance that you get a small, and then type in random capital R dot exponential capital E. And then remember, we're going to use this table to populate it, okay? So it'll be a random 40, and then if you just like the other tables, it'll automatically add another row once you hit return here, and you go to the next row, you populate it for medium, populate it for large. For the expression property, you have to make sure that you populate these values correctly too. You have to make sure that let's call this fill time in these two windows. And then over here, you have to make sure it's a time and it's listed in seconds. Okay, so now we go to our model and we want to populate the model. We create 3 entities. So we grab the model entities over here and we call them small, medium, and large. Okay. And then in the mid-arrival, the mid-arrival is going to just be attached with a type. And so here when you click in this box, you're going to see there's an option to you can start typing coffee type table, and then it's going to be in the menu, and it'll be it'll be this coffee size. Okay, and that's because we created that object in the table before. Now, once we have that, we can also say, well, we look at the table row referencing, okay, and we're going to click down in there, and we're going to reference an existing row. We're going to say the table name is coffee type table again, and then here, in the same way we've selected other properties, when you start typing coffee type table dot, right, you're going to see, first of all, it's going to populate in that menu that comes up. And then when you select it, you hit dot again, and it's going to give you the different columns to select. We want probability. And then here you're going to say dot random row. And then automatically what it's going to use is the weights that are in that column to select, in the same way that it does a selection for a routing, it's going to use that as a probability to determine which of the different coffee types to select. Okay, so now we have each entity coming in is equipped now with either a small, medium, or large coffee mug. Now we go to the self-service because you'll note that if it went down here, it doesn't really matter that the entity has a coffee type, right? It'll just be ignored. So that's okay. So it's not down here we have to look. We have to look up here in self-service. And then for the processing time, now we're going to select the coffee type table dot fill time column. And so it's going to know which of the different service times to select. Okay, and so what you should all be thinking now is, oh, right, when we have to do the barbecue pit model, right, this is the very thing we're going to have to use because all the different entrees and side items have different processing times. Okay, so we're going to have to make sure that we can grab those processing times from here. Okay. Then we're also going to, this is not really part of this lecture. Again, it's going to be in one subsequent to this, but we're going to put a little bit of a fun thing. This isn't really used in the barbecue pit, but it's good to know. We'll put what's called a reliability logic. And the reason why I think it's really important for you guys to learn this is that you're going to be doing a capstone project, and a lot of applications have a reliability idea. The notion that something can break down. And in this case, the breakdown is that what we're modeling is every 100 fills has an error, like somebody spills their cup or something, and it requires in minutes a little bit of time, this triangular 1 to 5 minutes with a mode of 2 minutes. So there's also, it's not evident in this picture, but when you click on here, this plus time to repair, you click on minutes. Okay, and we're going to see, and that will just, what will happen is when you run the simulation, you'll see every now and then the server gets a little bit backed up because of a spillage of the self-service. Okay, so it adds just yet more reality into the simulation. Okay, when you run this and you look over in the table, what you're going to see is, if you ran this with one size, then you would get this sort of idea. And now when we run it, we're also going to get the different small, medium, and larges over here. Okay, so when you look at the entity, if you were to scroll down, you're going to see the entity types appearing. And then we also see that this starts to affect things in the server itself. Even with one size, there's a time failed. Like if you just didn't do the entities, you would have had this picture on the left. If you do the different entity types, the different coffee types, then you have this kind of thing over here. And it does indeed affect it. Okay, don't worry about the coffee urn for this lecture. That'll be in a later lecture.